Salvador has worked the vineyard for old Ed Chase 10 years now. They speak the universal language of crops. It is early fall in this place called El Paso de Robles, and the variegated leaves will cling to the vines through November. In Chiapas, they call this La Salida, the time of leaving. The locals warned Mr. Chase that grapes wouldn't flourish this far east of the California coast. The soil was too dry and acidic. Pollution blew in from the valley. Only an occasional oak topped the hills rolling into the murky horizon. But Salvador followed a cleft dotted with green chaparral and sycamores until he found a natural spring. The gravelly soil was surprisingly nutrient-rich, and the tough-skinned Cabernets survived both heat and cold. "I never would have believed it," he said. "How did you learn so much about grapes?" Salvador smiled, looking down. "In Mexico, from my father." "Ah, father to son. That's the best way." In truth, Salvador's father and mother died when he was 7, but mentioning this brought questions he did not want to answer about why he fled Mexico. He knew he should feel lucky. The old man was a dream patron. He should be happy beyond all imagination. But lately, with the last few harvests, he has felt la inquietud, unsettled. By noon, Salvador arrived in San Diego. Continuing south, he had a clear view of Tijuana. He pulled off the highway and walked to the top of a mesa to check his map. Only a few miles away, Tijuana seemed sunk in a murky haze, surrounded by hills crammed with rolling waves of makeshift houses made of cardboard and aluminum siding. Filthy buses trailing smoke clouds chugged up seemingly impossible switchbacks and stopped to let off tiny speck-like passengers who scrambled up dirt pathways to reach houses miles farther out. Bisecting the valley below was a double wall of corrugated steel and wire mesh separated by a 10-foot stretch of no man's land. The city, a prism of asphalt, concrete, and rainbow colors, slumped against one side of the wall, then bled east and west through a floodplain. It seemed that all of Mexico was pressed against the fence, that it should bend and crumble from the weight. When he had first passed over 15 years ago, the border was no more than a line in the sand. La Línea, a wire cable separating the two countries. People crossed easily, mixing fluidly, returning to Mexico, or following the freeways north to Gringolandia. Salvador felt comfort in this conversation of sand and sea. The surfers in their ecstasy of sport made him think of dolphins and how easily they slipped back and forth across the border in their oceanic meanderings. The fishing village itself was a marvel of timelessness. Look in either direction and see the gray desert sand glued in the wavering line to the green hues of the ocean, then seam to the straight, sure boundary of the horizon. Only a sandy road lapping to the highway connected them to civilization. Uncle Isaac had talked about the stars, how the gods had formed them to be the first lights on the dim mass of Earth before they made the moon and the sun. He'd said that falling stars are like people, barely scratching the sky of history with a scrawl. Floating in the black vastness, Salvador felt like a star doing the same in the heavens. The current tugged him to the south, and he briefly considered going with it, slipping away. Who would notice one star missing from the sky to mourn his passing?